So today we are joined with another guest on the Bootroom Podcast, Adrian Tucker. But this time, Harry Hennings is, of course, alongside me once
Absolutely, let's get into it.
And Adrian, welcome to the podcast. As we briefly mentioned before, we do have a soft spot for Merthyr Tydfil where you grew up. So could you just speak to us about your early days playing football and also your career as a whole?
Yeah, obviously started at a young age when everybody starts kicking a ball at that really infant years, I suppose. And that was in the Merthyr Valley. The county of Merthyr Tydfil, so born in that neck of the woods, but brought up in a place called Treharys, Quickyard Treharys, where I played most of my football as a young individual. So that's the bottom end of sort of Merthyr, about 6 or 7 miles away from it. But if anybody asks, where am I born, I'm proud to say from Merthyr Tydfil, yeah.
Growing up then, what was your preferred position to play in? Obviously, we've all had our times in goal, up front, and defence.
Yeah.
Like I left backs on Sundays as well. So for you, what was the ideal place to play?
No, I remember actually going to my first boys' club, which was Treharys Boys' Club, and all my friends who I'm still in contact with now, and we have a little group all together. You know, currently, I was offered the opportunity to go and train with Treharys Boys Club, and most of my friends were a year older, so it was about playing for them because their goalkeeper, who's still a friend of mine, had broken his arm, I think it was, or something like that. So I turned up and we had a little training session in the boys club hall, and I had to play in a game on a Saturday against Ponlottin, and I remember drawing 2-2, so it was a good start. So.
One of the most recognisable teams of your playing career was Torquay, and you did play in the FA Cup replay against Enfield, and obviously we've interviewed a player who plays now.
The one and only game.
And what was that like to play in that? I mean, at the time you were probably like so hyped for that game and.
I actually had to go on. It was Ashley Bays, who's the goalkeeper coach now at Wimbledon, AFC Wimbledon. He got sent off in that game, and I had to go on with about I think it was after about half an hour. So it was a big game at the time. You know, we were in the old Division 3 sort of thing, that type of thing. And it was my debut, and Ashley had brought down a player outside the box, and the referee, if I can remember his name was Mike Reid, sent Ashley off, and I had to go on. And the first thing I had to deal with was an in-swinging free kick, and it's got played in, and I've come through a crowd of people, got studied in the eye, and had 3 stitches in the top of the eye. It's a little scar for my trouble. So came off half time, bit groggy. Norman Medhurst, who was actually the England physio at the time, chucked a couple of stitches in it, and out I went the second half. I got through to extra time, and I think we lost 2-1 after extra time or something like that. But no, it was joking apart. It was my one and only game as a professional player. You cherish them moments and look back on them with fond memories.
Obviously, injuries are the worst part of the game, right? They're awful, but obviously it's difficult to actually be accepted that you won't ever play again professionally. So what's it like mentally to be told? Obviously, physically you can't, but mentally, does it take quite a big toll on you? Yeah,
no. But when I went to club environment, my opportunity came, and it came about. I was quite. Well, I was told I was quite a good goalkeeper at a young age in them environments. I played for, the Welsh national teams at 16s and 18s at the time, and that type of thing. And there was an opportunity to go to a couple of clubs, and Torquay was one. And after going down on trial there, I enjoyed the period of trial. Although they were Division 3, I thought there was a better opportunity, and they were struggling at the time towards the bottom of Division 3, and there was a player coach down there, or a coach down there, Paul Compton, who again still in contact with throughout my life, and still in contact now to the day. He was down there supporting Neil Warnock, who was manager at the time, and Kev Blackwell. And I went down there, really enjoyed it, and he said about, would you sign, and that type of thing. I played in the reserve team in midweek, and offered me the opportunity to sign. And I said, well, it's really dependent on whether you stay in the league and that type of thing. And they actually won the game to stay up on the final day of the season. I was in the house watching as it came through at the time on grandstand, and the Billy Printer comes in and Torquay won, which was brilliant. And then the house phone rang, literally 5 o'clock. And I pick it up, hello, and that type of thing. And it's Paul Compton.
Oh, wow.
Will you sign for us now? And I thought that it just took me back that, it was 10 minutes after they got, kept their place in the Football League. And the first thing he thought was ringing me to go down and become an apprentice down there. And that sort of really summed it up for me.
It's quite a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And like I said, there was an opportunity to go to higher clubs and bigger clubs in leagues. But no, I thought that. And listen, I was down there for 3 years near enough, and it was fantastic. As I said, I I had a great opportunity. You know, it was the first year really there was a goalkeeper on the bench. Ashley Bay was signed. They released another senior goalkeeper and allowed me to take up that role as number 2. And yeah, you know, you learn so much from working in that environment. And as well as being number 2, I was kit man. I was this, I was that. You know, and that's how it was. And you look back on life, and you know, I'm working with some top young players now, and you know, they're not allowed to do all these things, unfortunately. And I think they were massive learning experiences for me when you look back. That you know, you had to do the kit. You know, and it might be a silly thing, but I used to do Ashley's kit when he used to come back in soaking wet through sweat and that type of thing. And I used to put his kit out for him every morning, but then after training, he'd put it back on the floor all folded. And I said, "Oh, just chuck it down." No. He'd say, "Tux, you give it to me all folded. You have it back all folded. It might be all sweaty and dirty." And that was the thing I've took. And every time my wife might not believe this, but every time I take my clothes off, I sort of fold them, put them there, that type of thing now.
Yeah.
You know, when we're in club or we're in camp with England. So I think it's a little thing I picked up, and
they stick with
things
you,
that are important.
Those sort of things stick with you.
Yeah,
for
100%.
forever, won't
100%.
they?
You know, you go in changing rooms now and the socks thrown on the floor. This is so on, and someone's got to pick them up. But you know, if you can make a life easier for someone, I think is a little important lesson you can learn. Like so, yeah, little silly things like that. But I think they're valuable things in life.
So would you say, back in the day, and obviously like Thomas Muller, who's at the back end of his career, was a prime example. He always still cleans his own boots, and he still does, as you mentioned there, there's like fine details. But back in the day, maybe when he was first playing, the younger players used to do the older players' boots. And even those small things. So do you still agree that should still be about? Do you think the players should have discipline coming through?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You know, it is just taking pride in doing things. I used to take pride in doing Ashley's boots or the manager's boots and that type of thing. And you put them out there and you look checking, are they okay? And yeah, it's just little things. But nowadays, you know, at the top level, you know, they have hundreds. You know, the boots get dirty, and they probably buy a new pair, or they get a new pair sent to them or whatever, which is great. But you know, there's just little things. But no doubt, you know, down in the lower leagues or in the pyramid system, you know, people still got to do the things that don't come easy for them at the top level. Like.
Moving on then to the Wales women's national team. Obviously, once Andy Beattie, but his resignation was confirmed, you then managed a team for around 2 years, and it said here preparing squads for UEFA competitions. That's quite something, isn't it, to prepare a squad for UEFA competitions? So how did it feel going into these sort of like training sessions and these meetings, knowing that you've got big games to prepare for?
Yeah, you know, that was always an interesting one, working for the Football Association of Wales. I did that for 13 years, and it's a little bit of sort of spinning plates, I suppose. You know, you're not just doing one job. You know, I was appointed as the senior coach there, as you said, but I'm doing other things, you know, and then, you know, you're running around the country doing this, that, and the other. You're doing your other jobs, you're doing your local stuff, and so on, and that's just part of it. And that's how it was back. What was that? 2007, 2008, maybe.
Yeah,
So. So you know, that was 20 years ago. You look at women's football now; it's totally different. You know, it's 100% totally different. But that's what it was at the time, and that's what you had to do. So, yeah, I'd worked with Andy Beattie for a number of years, to be honest. Before that, as a goalkeeper coach, and listen, he stepped away, and I was asked to do the job. It was a challenge. There was loads of challenges, but you know, you learn so much from it, and you know, supported by other coaches and all that. And yeah, you know, was it a great time for Welsh football? We were at the time, sort of thing. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I gained experiences from it, and move on as you do in football.
So obviously, we were speaking about this just briefly before. What was it like for you personally? And I know you've been with the FA recently, to get into the coaching game, because you mentioned about not having to play 500 games. So what is it like for the average person? How could we get into coaching?
Into coaching itself?
Yeah.
The best starting point is obviously any coaching qualifications, and you know, nowadays, you know, same with any walk of life, you know, you need some form of qualification. Experience helps, no doubt about it, but yeah, qualifications, getting onto the coaching courses, etc. So within the FA, you'll attend your level 1 courses, etc., and then, you know, whatever you want to take, whatever pathway you want to take from there. So you'll probably link that in whether you want to coach within, you know, the grassroots environment or any other environment, you know, semi-professional, professional level, that type of thing will all be dependent then on your qualifications that you gain.
Something that I'm quite interested in, I think Jamie is as well, is actually getting our coaching badges ourselves. But is it a process which you would only recommend if we really, really committed to it?
No, because I think at all levels, well, I know at all levels, you will need your coaching badges. So if you wanted to just work at your local grassroots club, you'll need to have a coaching qualification to do that.
Okay.
You know, yes, it will be voluntary, etc. But the same as anything, when you do your DBS checks and so on and so forth, you know, the qualification is mandatory to do that and work with your players, your young players, whether it be in the male game, female game as well. Like so any walk of life, as I said, you know, you probably need a qualification or need general qualifications, and there's no different within the coaching world.
Okay.
Because what I always tend to say is, and I've never stepped foot on the coaching side of things, but it's the same concept, right? If you are coaching at the top level or if you are coaching at grassroots, so you can get a feel as if to whether you would like it or not, right?
Yeah. We have people at the top end of the game. You know, we do a lot of work, with A license courses and B license courses, and professional players just coming out of the game. And some of them come to me or call me and I say, I'm not quite sure what I want to do or what I want to be a coach, and go into coaching and say, well, I don't know, I can't answer that question. You need to try to experience it. And, you know, we've had people that have come on courses and then decide they want to just hold back on that, and maybe not for them. But we've had some also come on thinking, I'm not quite sure, and then come on and it's taken off for them and they love it and they want to do more and more. Like, so you're always going to get a different range of aspects, you know, around that. But if you've got a keen interest in football and, you know, you want to stay in the game, if you can't play, you know, one of the next best things I guarantee you is coaching. So.
Yeah, because obviously for me, Jamie stopped last year, but this is my last full year for football.
Too injury prone.
It's my last. It's my last year of football this year, and obviously it's gutting knowing that you've been playing since you were like 2-3 years old, all the way up to 17, 18. So would you say straight after that, perhaps it's a good idea to try and get into it then?
Yeah, I was always encouraging when I was at club for players to actually do it while they were still playing as well.
Oh, okay.
You know, they have a lot of time on their hands, or I've seen them having a lot of time on their hands when they might finish training and have their lunch and their half, and they got the afternoon off. You know, my time at Swansea, we run a B license course for the players at Swansea. Like Leon Britton, Gary Monk, and people like that were all around in Mark Howard at the time. The Spanish boys were really big into it and getting involved, and a couple of them have stayed in the game, you know, post playing, and gone on to coaching. You know, Gary went on to managing, etc., and was pointed in that direction. And what it does is it sometimes saves time. So, you know, you could finish playing, you know, at the end of the season. So you finish playing in May, but then you can't get on a course for 12 months, etc., and so on. You know, I'm working with some goalkeepers now that are currently playing or coming to the end of their career and are coming on our courses now because they're not sure. And one or two of them have literally finished playing in the last 12 months and gone straight into coaching jobs because they've got the qualifications under the belt, which clubs want.
The thing is, for me, is I hear quite a few coaches who are C definitely, but B, A, and maybe even pro licenses, they're not even doing full-time roles. So would you say that once you come out the qualification, it's not so much the badge, it's more about the experience you can build on with that?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of both. Like, you know, the ideal situation is to get the experience with the qualification. And again, you know, if I'm talking about people in the pro game that are going on their coaching badges or going on their coaching journey, it's not just a case of doing the badge and they're just leaving it. They have to go and find it relevant experience to put into practice what's being given to them on the course. So that's really, really important. So I think they come hand in hand really in relation to what's required.
Now, obviously, you mentioned Swansea, and it was a big part of your career, 5-year spell there. So joining in 2009 in July, but you went through a lot of managerial changes like Brendan Rodgers, Laudrup, Gary Monk, as you mentioned. But they're quite big names in football, aren't they? Like Laudrup is a big player, Brendan Rodgers are managers now. So what it's like to go through sort of like you stay as a coach, but you see different manager changes happen.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate with coaches, and even before that, my first manager at Swansea City was Paulo Sousa, who was a massive player himself in his time. So yeah, it is a challenge. And then, you know, moving on from Swansea in Sunderland, it was similar with, you know, David Moyes and Sam Allardyce to name two. Like, you know, so the big name managers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a challenge. It is a challenge, you know, to stay in a role and to stay in a job. No doubt. You see. Even this weekend, unfortunately, a former manager, Graham Potter, has lost his job, you know, for a second time in recent times. But he doesn't just lose his job. There's 6 or 7 staff that lose their jobs as well. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, it can become a stressful time for individuals. So, yeah, I just believe that when I'm in a role, I try to do the best that I can, whether it's my loyalty or what clubs have seen in me. You know, I stayed at Swansea for 5 years, as you just alluded to, and had 3 or 4 managers. and then went on to the next club after that, going to Sunderland. I think I had 5 or 6 managers at the time I left. So and at any time there, I could have lost my job. Just the same as anybody else, but I stayed. I showed my loyalty. I showed hopefully showed my qualities to people, and that's why I stayed so long in the roles.
Watford do it quite a lot now. Obviously, they have a roller coaster of managers every 3 months. But a lot of the backroom staff, especially one that's come from Real Madrid, the goalkeeper coach there, they seem to have stayed between managers. So I suppose, is that just down to the club if they want to remove the whole backroom staff and start fresh, or is it?
Yes. Some clubs, Watford, I don't know the ins and outs of Watford, obviously, but, it could be a relationship. It could be someone knows someone and, they maintain their job. It might be a case of just finances that clubs can't afford to allow 5 or 6 members of staff to come. My time at Swansea, with Hugh Jenkins, who was the manager at the time. Brendan obviously left to go to Liverpool at the time. And Hugh didn't want to have the same situation as he did when Roberto Martinez left Swansea to go to Wigan at the time, and he took all his staff. So he was adamant he wanted to keep the core staff in place, and to be fair, that's what he did for the next couple of years. And as you know, we had a little bit of success on the back of that until after Hugh had left, and then all the staff left.
Obviously,
sorry, go on.
Obviously, you've worked with many goalkeepers during your time, but one I did want to bring up was Michel Vorm. Now, obviously, as a Spurs fan, he did seem to get quite a lot of stick, quite a lot of hate from the fans. He was, I think, he was third choice after Lloris, Gazaniga, etc. But did you see anything particular in him that made you believe that he could go on to be a big keeper? Because when he signed for us, he was meant to be our number one when Lloris's injuries and whatever. But what was your sort of like verdict?
We got promoted with Swansea, and Doris Rees, who was the goalkeeper there, moved on to Wolverhampton at the time, so we needed to recruit a goalkeeper, and Michel was one of the ones that we sort of highlighted as an individual. He was in and around the Dutch national team, etc. I went to watch him play for Utrecht in his first game at VV Venlo of the season, and that was on, I think, on the Saturday, and the following Monday he was playing for us against Manchester City in the first game. He showed his qualities. His in possession elements were different classes. That's what we wanted at Swansea, the way we played. But also he was a damn good goalkeeper to keep the ball at the back of the net as well. And I think he showed that in the spell with us then for a couple of years. He did struggle a little bit with injury towards the end of Swansea, if I remember rightly. And then obviously went to Tottenham. Where he went to Tottenham as number one, and Lloris was probably the number one at the time, and Michel would have been an adequate backup towards him. But if he didn't feel he played enough, or when he did play, how he performed, that's down to obviously Tottenham and the members of the public that believe whether he did a good job or not.
Yeah.
So when the club get rid of all their staff, right, and the new staff comes in, how long does it take to implement that style into the team? Because I know for you as a goalkeeper coach, possibly not so much, but I know that you still might want your goalkeeper to play a different way.
Yeah. You have to work on the philosophy really of the managers. It can't be about what I want. I'll have my beliefs in the way I want to see from my goalkeepers, no doubt. But if a manager wants to play in a certain way, a passing way, then you've got to work with your goalkeepers to do that. If they want to be more direct, then you have to implement that within your training with your goalkeepers at the same time. So it's a little bit of adaptation, I suppose, with the managers that you have to work with, and I think that's what you have to do as a goalkeeper coach or any member of staff. Your manager's going to change if you're going to stay there. If I stayed my same, I'm always going to remain as an individual the way I like to work or whatever. But if the manager wanted to work in a certain way, you have to adapt accordingly, to fit in with what he requires. Otherwise, there's no doubt you're going to have clashes along the way. Unless it's a manager which is happy to have that sort of, challenge, and you do get managers that you can challenge, and there's some managers that they're in charge, and you've just got to toe the line with them.
Obviously, the main priority for you as a coach is to gel with the goalkeeper. But if they get an injury that keeps them up for a long period of time, what's the sort of process? Do you have to then revert to calling up a youth keeper, or do you, obviously, in terms of building that relationship, is it hard to then start a new relationship with the youth player if your third number one choice is out for such a long period of time?
Yeah, it can differ. I think in most of the clubs I've been involved with, we try to have a relationship with the academy departments there for the goalkeepers. So the transition, if they come up, is not a big a big transition, and they can settle in and feel part of the working group. So I think that's a key thing. You never know what's going to happen with your goalkeepers. Like you said, they could be out for a couple of weeks, couple of months, etc. And you normally have your number 2 and number 3 as a support in element within the environment. And it's not just, and I try to say this, is not just looking after your number 1 when they play, and the most important ones are your number 2s and number 3s as well, because if something does happen to them, they need to be ready for what's required.
When you got promoted from the Championship into the Premier League, what was that celebration like for you with Brendan Rodgers and with the backroom staff, with the players? What happened after you got promoted?
We were a close-knit group, to be fair, a close-knit group of players, but also staff members as well. Most of us were Welsh-based, in the back room, whether your physio, your doctor, your analysis, etc., etc. We were all quite close, so it was a special moment, and the players were a special group as well, and I think that was vital. And we were managed tremendously well by Brendan, who knew how to look after people and manage people, and with everybody all gelling together there, you could see what was on the wall, that we were going to get promoted. Okay, we went up through the playoffs, but it was a fantastic experience, and it's probably the best way to go up. Winning at Wembley and so on, in front of all the fans and so on. And I can't remember much about the celebrations, but coming back on the bus from Wembley to Swansea and having an enjoyable night, shall I say.
And not only that, Brendan Rodgers did such a good job with Leicester as well. Obviously, he got them into
and
Europe. Liverpool, yeah.
And Leicester.
On the whole, he's done well with Celtic as well.
Yeah.
I said Leicester,
yeah.
On the whole, pretty well with Celtic as well. And then 2 years later, there's more silverware, League Cup victory under Laudrup. So that's 2 bits of silverware in 2 years, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, like I said, it was a good time. It was a good time to be at Swansea. Brendan done a fantastic job there. He moved on to Liverpool. Obviously, Michael came in and continued us moving forward on where we were. Added to that with some top players, as you know, people Pablo Hernandez, Michu, and so on came into the team on that, and we were able to progress onto the going further forward and get the victory, like you said, in the League Cup final at Wembley against Bradford.
Yeah.
The Europa League was up in that year, 2013-14, and it was quite an interesting one because you went to Russia, and obviously now we know Russia in UEFA competitions, but when you are playing in Russia, you're not quite playing in Europe, and for your instance, you're definitely playing in Asia. So on the other side of it, on the other side of Russia. So for you guys to get there, how did you actually get there, and what was the experience like for you?
Yeah, well, the bus left. We obviously travelled by plane. I can't remember an awful lot about it. When we do travel to Europe, it's generally you're flying in the day before, and you might have a training session, for half an hour on the pitch, an hour on the pitch beforehand, and then you play the game and you fly out. You have some interesting things where fans might be trying to keep the players awake, and we've had the issues of fireworks going off and things like that the night before and keeping you awake, or the fire alarm going off. But yeah, it is part and parcel of European competition. But we had some really good experiences in Europe, through that period as well.
It's not that far from Europe.
Yeah, it's a long way down. Yeah.
It's on the border of Asia.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you went to.
I've been to Georgia a couple of times, so I know it's a long way. So.
But you quite rightly say you had some good moments. Finished second in the league behind Valencia, so through to the knockouts. Then you did get knocked out to Napoli, but obviously Napoli are a big club. But what's it like playing in Italy, in Naples? Because obviously, to me, it seems like it's quite hostile there, the fans, and obviously the way they play.
Good pizza though.
Good pizza,
yeah. Again, we played some really top sides, like you mentioned there. Valencia at the time were a top side, and we won away in Valencia. I think we drew the first leg against Napoli at home 0-0, I think, if I remember rightly, and we lost 3-1, I think, in the return leg. But they're really, really good experiences, and like you say, whether you're on a coaching journey as a coach going forward from where it'd been, and then getting working in the Premier League, and then next thing you want to do is work in European competition and so on, and playing against the teams or competing against the teams and the managers that we spoke about there. I think Benitez was in charge, if I remember rightly, at Napoli at the time, maybe. Yeah. And, it's fantastic, and it's all moments that I cherish as a coach, 100%.
You were with England and Birmingham for only about a year, 2014 to 2015. But what sticks out to me is Jordan Pickford. And so you developed him when he was a young goalkeeper. So did you actually see the potential in him?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I developed them. I supported
You
them.
were there.
That's what I was around and about at the sort of time. But I was at Birmingham. It was in between jobs. You know, I lost my job at Swansea in the May-June time, and then I didn't go into Sunderland I think until the following March. So in between, I'd gone to Norwich to help Norwich out through the sort of pre-season program there with them, and then. Got the opportunity then to go into Birmingham, so I supported the guys there at Birmingham, Christian Speakman, who's now technical director at Sunderland, while they went through the process of recruiting and so on. And then at the same time, I was doing a little bit with England under 20s, and that obviously involved Jordan as well at the time. So yeah, it was good to see Jordan at a young age. Obviously, in that period of time, I didn't know I was going to go to Sunderland then in the March. And obviously was observing him at games, etc., and seeing him in the international environment a couple of times, and then ended up going into Sunderland the following March. He was out on loan at Bradford at the time, I think it was, and then obviously met up with him also in the pre-season, and the first thing I done was sent him on loan to Preston.
Obviously, being informed that you're going to lose your job isn't ideal at all, but how were you informed? Was it a phone call, an email? Were you called face-to-face, or how was the process?
No, the one, which one are we talking about now? There's been a couple.
The Swansea, sorry.
The Swansea one, obviously Gary made a decision that he wanted to, change his staff or bring his own staff in because he was going to get given the job. It was a strange one really, because I think we were playing Sunderland away, ironically, last game of the season. And we were just talking about the following year, etc. And I think I was doing my element of recruitment for goalkeepers and who I had in mind. And it was actually Fabianski, and people are sort of talking about that. And I just got the feeling within the conversation that there was something strange. And we had a conversation. And he let me know that he was looking to make a change, which he did. It's life. Was I happy with it? No, certainly I wasn't, because I thought I'd supported the group quite well in the time. But listen, people make their decisions based on what they think is right at the time for themselves and the club, and it happens. So you just move on from it then and go on to the next one. And it's what happens in football, unfortunately. You go into it now. Back at the time, you're disappointed, you're gutted. You lose sleep, and you have all the mental challenges around that. When you're losing your job as a coach, but listen, you look back on it now, and I'm a bit stronger mentally and stronger, thicker skin on what you deal with, because you realise, as I say, going back to even this weekend, people are losing their jobs now. It's the football world, unfortunately, but there's some sort of bug out there, or some sort of thing that's inside us that want us to get back on that roller coaster to go and experience the highs. But unfortunately, there's a low around the corner as well. How long can you last?
I know for Potter getting sacked, he got paid his wage, right? Because obviously the second. So is it the same for the coaching staff? Because you would have been under contract, or is it just you're now no money coming in?
No, listen, with coaching contracts, they can be all different. Managers' contracts will be different to coaches' contracts. It could be dependent on the club, etc. So normally you'll have some form of termination within your contract, and clubs would be obliged to pay whatever that is, within that. So I think that that's one of the important things if you're in the game. It's not just about what your salary might be, but your contract is going to get terminated at some time. Whether that's if we're using West Ham as an example, they just appointed 2 new goalkeeper coaches in the summer from clubs that they've recruited in. They've lost their job already within 2 months. Do you know what I mean? They'll be no doubt compensated, for that. So. I think that's the way it would generally work across most areas.
When you go to scout a goalkeeper, what's the most integral thing you look for? Is it distribution? Is it like confidence? Is it ability to command a box? What are the main things that you want to see in a goalkeeper that you're going to eventually work with?
I think it's where you're working. So what best suits you. So at the moment, when I'm out watching games or observing our players in the system, it's how they fit into our characteristics within the England DNA and what we want from them. Obviously, a lot of that is possession based. So good use of the feet is always, apparent in what's required there. But fundamentally, we still have to keep the ball out the back of the net and defend our area well as well. So, you're looking for all these areas. So, going back to the characteristics, we have sort of 19 characteristics within that. The people like Jordan Pickford, or Dean Henderson have all 19 characteristics, to the high level. They don't.
No.
Do you know what I mean? But, how many of them can you tick off, within that? And it's the same for our younger goalkeepers. That's what we want to, what we see as the perfect goalkeeper. But we're not going to get the perfect goalkeeper. Jordan's not the perfect goalkeeper. People, if he was in the pub chatting about Jordan on a Sunday afternoon, there'd be 3 or 4 people are loving him, 3 or 4 people are hating him, and so on. So again, that's football opinion, but you're going out there looking for from them elements of a goalkeeper, which is going to make them top class for that environment. So if it's a club environment, as I said, when you're looking at recruiting, as I did going back to Michelle for Swansea, you're looking, well, is he going to fit into what's required for Swansea? If he couldn't pass or play out or be comfortable on the ball, and all he could do was kick 80 yards, he wouldn't have been for Swansea City, because that's not how the manager wanted to play or the head coach wanted to play. We've
got the World Cup coming up next year, and it's a really exciting time for the goalkeeper department as well, because we've got a lot of goalkeepers in this team. We've got Dean Henderson, Jordan Pickford, Ramsdale, Pope, so many. Yeah. And I suppose it's up to the goalkeeper coaches, it's up to Tuchel to decide who are the best goalkeepers. But we know that Pickford's going to get selected. But perhaps, is there any outsiders in the squad that you'd maybe think they do have a chance, that maybe aren't quite in the headlines every week?
Yeah, well, you did mention like Trafford there,
of course,
who's played recently as well. Like, so, you've got a number of good goalkeepers. We've got a number of youngsters coming through the system, and probably not ready for a World Cup in less than 12 months' time now. But I think it's going to be 3 goalkeepers from the 5 you named at the moment, or 5 or 6 that you named there. That would be my probably.
Who's a hot prospect? Who can we get on the podcast before they get really famous?
No, there's a lot. I'm not going to name names, but there's goalkeepers out there playing, and there's some at the club environment now that are supporting number 3s, number 2s, and number 3s at club, not getting game experience, but they're in the supporting environment with their club environments. But there's also some that are playing and being sent out on loan to get experience as their next step. They've played under 21s football at their club, and now the clubs have pushed them into the league environment, the League One and League Two sort of thing. So, that's where I was on Saturday, watching people like that are in the environment as their next step, but their development within their pathway.
Obviously, you mentioned James Trafford, and obviously you're a Man City fan yourself. When Ederson obviously moved on, and you probably, like a lot of other fans, thought Trafford would be the main man, because obviously Donnarumma was sort of seeing like maybe it's not going to happen, but then it did happen. So did you feel like do you think Trafford's hard done by the fact he was starting games and Donnarumma's come in? He'll be the main man, right?
Yeah. I think if you look at it now, that's how it looks. But it's up to James to work hard and push for his place back. You never know what's going to happen in football. There could be injuries, there could be illnesses, and he gets his opportunity, and it's up to him to try to take the shirt. No doubt he'd be disappointed. He started the season, but the goalkeeper they've signed is a top goalkeeper. I think he's voted world #1 goalkeeper last week. So he's not a bad one to come in. But if I'm James there, I'm disappointed. But I've got to roll my sleeves up and get on with it in a way. It's the life of football again. So I'm sure knowing James a little bit as I do, that he'll roll his sleeves up and be pushing to do his utmost to oust him for another opportunity with the shirt.
Graham Potter, you're part of his coaching staff at Swansea. That's really early on in his career, right? And so for you to join quite an inexperienced coach in the backroom staff, in a team that really wanted to sort of like push on and get away from where they were, what was it like for you going into the club at that time?
Yeah, Graham got appointed, and then I was out of work. I just left Sunderland that summer, so I had a phone call from Hugh Jenkins, the chairman who was still at Swansea, asking if I'd be interested in coming back, because Graham didn't have a goalkeeper coach, and I obviously wanted to get back into football. He was going back to Swansea, and I was looking forward to working with Graham. So I had 12 months there. We done okay as a season. It was a good sort of foundation year, I would say, in that. But I moved on at the end of that season.
You worked with Fabianski, big goalkeeper.
Well, no, I didn't work with him. No,
did you not?
We ended up recruiting him, but
trying
to recruit him through.
Okay,
but the time I left, he came in.
Okay, fine. But obviously he's gone on to be a big part for West Ham as well. But yeah, if you didn't work with him, then obviously you can't say too much on that. No, sorry.
No, but to be around that environment, because you mentioned that you did see something in him, right? A couple years prior.
We were looking, like I said, Michelle was, whether Michelle was going to stay or we were struggling a little bit with his injury, we were looking to recruit, just like going back to Man City there, you're looking to have a good, solid goalkeeping unit, goalkeeping department there. So again, if Michelle wasn't going to be fit, we needed to make sure we had, goalkeepers to go in there, whether it was Gerhard Tremmel there at the time, it was Michelle and another if we needed a third one, etc., to come in there. So again, he was one. He was not playing regular, within Arsenal's setup at the time, I think it was, and done the background checks on him, etc. Done a little bit of analysis work as you do in putting something ready for the chairman to talk about or a manager to talk about. And he came top of my list really in someone that we could look to go after. Unfortunately, I left in that summer, and Swansea continued the recruitment process and ended up bringing him in.
What is the main difference then between a Premier League goalkeeper and one maybe in the Championship, League One, League Two?
Probably the same as the players. They probably just got that little bit more, in an all-round game, whether it's their in-possession elements, whether it's out of the possession elements. People can step up. We've showed that. There's a number of goalkeepers that have stepped up from Championship to the Premier League and taken it in their stride, no problem at all. But I think generally, they have that just little bit of added quality to their game, and they can make, where this in the goalkeeping environment, they can make them big saves, they can make them big decisions, they can make them good choices with their passing elements and so on. And generally, whether you're learning that as you go in from a Championship to the Premier League, or you sign from one big club to another big club in the Premier League because you have them elements already.
So you look at David Raya, who started off Blackburn, then moved on to Brentford, then went to Arsenal. So it's definitely an opportunity for keepers to start off with the smaller clubs and then they keep developing. And obviously now
it's all down to the experience. Comes down to the experience of what you learn and what you get, and you need a little bit of luck along the way. And you might be in a club which loves you a little bit more. You work with a goalkeeper coach or other staff that love you a little bit more, or you just bond that little bit more, which gives you that little bit extra. And it's the same as there's many walks of life and many sporting environments which are the same. You see the players. Someone might be left out of a team for months and months and months, and then a new manager comes in, and all of a sudden he's starting the first game of the new manager, and then you go, do you know what I mean? So sometimes it does come down to personal opinion and personalities and so on as well. But from the goalkeeping environments, there's a lot that you could relate back to, like you said, whether it was Jordan going through his long spell, even Traff doing the same, even Ramsdale doing the same. You go through it. There's so many that have started in the lower leagues and then gained the experience, and then first experiences to go further forward, because it's a big gap. And going back to someone like Jordan, when I first went into Sunderland, he wasn't going to play. I knew he wasn't going to play because the manager alluded that his number one and number two were not Jordan. So rather than him sitting there and becoming number three and becoming frustrated, I'd had a phone call from a club I wanted to take him as in Preston. And for me, the step between League One, where I last seen him, which was Bradford, to the Premier League where we were, was a big gap. But if we could fill that gap with a little bit of experience in the Championship, that would make my decision making a little bit more easier if he had to come into the Premier League, and also the manager's thinking as well. That was a sort of thought process around it. So he went to Preston the first half of the season. He was phenomenal in what he did there. I think he played 20 odd games and he was brilliant. And in that time, the previous manager, Dick Advocaat, left Sunderland. Sam Allardyce came in. Myself and Sam went down to a couple of midweek games to watch Jordan, and Sam said, well, I want him back in January, and he came back in January and played in the FA Cup game against Arsenal, and played the next league game, and had a couple of games between then and the end of the season, and then the following season he had a good full season with us. So that was a sort of process and development at my time, with him. So going back to what you say that I made Jordan, no, I didn't. It was just part of the process in his period in that time. So
I don't think you would have been there at that time, but obviously you were with Morocco and the national team. Not a goalkeeper, but Imran Louza. Did you work?
No.
Good player, by the way.
Good player. Yeah.
So you were overseeing the goalkeeping side of things.
Department,
in Morocco. How often were you staged in Morocco? And was that, I'm guessing, Marrakesh?
Yeah. No, we were in Rabat.
Okay.
Further north, on the coast of there. So, yeah, it was an opportunity. I was at Bristol Rovers at the time. A good friend and colleague of mine, Ocean Roberts, was technical director out in Morocco, and there was an opportunity to go out there. But unfortunately, COVID hit, and it was it got delayed a little bit on when I was going. And then when I did get the opportunity to go out there, managed to get out there, and the second wave of COVID came, and really got stuck out there. So obviously, it was difficult then for the family and travelling back and forth, which was the plan. So it was probably a difficult time, within that sort of commuting element and really being able to concentrate fully on that role because, of COVID and because of the lack of opportunity to, keep your family involved with that sort of move. So I think I was out there for 8 to 10 months in the end. And I think I got back twice in that sort of period of time. And, it's difficult when you feel you're locked in a place. And to be fair, Morocco done, as a country, were really proactive with COVID. They didn't allow you anywhere. You was locked down. You was in your area and you couldn't travel. And if your car was out, there's police everywhere stopping, making sure you had the right documentation for where you could travel. And it was hard to get out of your own little town or little village, little town centre sort of thing, let alone trying to get out of the country. So,
on a personal side, though, what's it like moving from Swansea and Sunderland to Morocco? That's quite a big jump, isn't it?
I always wanted to experience working abroad, and like I said, it'd be nice that my kids are at that age where it was difficult to move because they're going through their schooling and that type of thing. So it was a personal ambition for that, but it would have been nice to do it all from a family point of view and so on, with my wife and my children. But that it didn't materialize as well as we wanted. But listen, I went out there even before going. I knew I was going and I'd gone out, signed the contract, but it was trying to find the moment to go out there because of COVID. I was learning French on the apps and things like that and that type
Duolingo.
of thing. The Duolingo, which is great. So, but they were all great experiences because I thought the language. But actually, when you got out there, they didn't speak a lot of French. It was more so the Moroccan Arabic sort of thing. So, it came in useful because by the end of it, and saying I was learning French then for say 12 months, 15 months. Actually, by the end of it, I was starting to deliver the courses out there, which I was involved in as well, within using French. Bit broken French. I don't know how good it was at the time, but it was a challenge. But they were all little things out of my comfort zone, which was giving me more experience as well. So I was happy with them sort of things. And then when you're coaching on the field, and you've got your goalkeepers that speak a little bit of English, but you've got to use your little bit of Moroccan words that you pick up, and then a little bit of French, and your football terminology within that. Then it was really interesting. And, it was a challenge and. Again, a nice little experience to bank for that period of time.
AFCON's up in, is it January 2026? And I'm right in saying that every 4 years, AFCON happens twice in the 2 consecutive years. Is that right? So it's 2026, 2027, but then it won't happen for 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's weird.
You'll have to, I don't follow that often over a 4 year period anyway. But I think they do something similar along those lines, or what you've mentioned. Yeah.
So I'm interested to know about, is Morocco able to cope with the football? Because I know that they want to host a World Cup.
So it's fantastic, yeah.
Do you think Morocco is going to be able to cope with AFCON?
Yeah. They're not coping with all of the World Cup, are they? But I don't know if you've seen the new stadium they've built. It's fantastic. It's as good as any Premier League stadium that they've built. It's a fantastic. They love their football out there. They are so passionate about the football. The infrastructure around Morocco is probably not there at the moment, but that they'll be working on. They have a lot of, when they put their mind to something, they'll go after it. That's how it seemed to me in that short period of time. And I think hopefully you'll see that when the World Cup comes around. They're such a passionate nation in relation to their football. They love their football. The fans love their football out there, and I think it'll be a great host venue for the World Cup.
The King's putting a lot of money into that.
Yeah,
It's
supposed to be.
The King is big into Morocco, and then if they need something,
he'll do it.
The King will do it.
Yeah, and they've got the players to do it as well, right?
Imran Loser.
They got some, not just Loser. They got other good players as well. They've got
That means they're all not going to be in the. They're not going to play for Watford. They're not going to play for Liverpool.
Well,
they're all going to go.
yeah.
No.
Well, Watford might suffer then. Yeah.
See,
Big time.
When some countries host these tournaments, they seem to do even better because they're in their homeland. It was different with Qatar. They were poor throughout the whole tournament, but I think Morocco could have a really, really good chance to go very far.
Morocco, good side.
They're a really good side. They're very well structured as well.
Yeah, the development of Moroccan football, like I said, if you ever went there and ended up being in their training centre, their training centres like St George's Park. People, couldn't believe it when I used to say this, but it is like St George's Park, and it's continuing to develop. There's a lot of other things outside of things, which is it's the same, poverty and things like that around it, but what they've got there as a football centre is fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the World Cup's obviously being designed, and I know that you mentioned it won't just be held in Morocco. Do you agree then, because I know that you are part of the England setups and things like that, do you think it's right to have the World Cup host nation spread across two different countries?
Listen, it's a personal thing. I don't mind. I don't really look into it that much. For
the players, though?
Listen, FIFA do it for their reasons, whether it's spreading the world around football or so on, giving more opportunities for everybody, in developing the game. Then it's a fantastic opportunity. Like you said, remind me of Morocco. Where else they go? And they go down to Uruguay, is it, or something like that as well?
Is it Spain?
Spain. Yeah.
They're selling the message, and they're selling the world of football around the globe, and that can only be a good thing, surely, for the next generation of football players out there.
Should be anyway. And last one from me then. I ask this to every guest we have on the podcast. What's the highlight of your career? What's the moment where you really thought, I'm on cloud nine?
Being here.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
No, I've had some really pleasing moments and proud moments throughout it. And listen, I am. It's not just done by myself. It's done by working with a number of people, whether it's the players within squads that you've worked with or your staff members, etc. We were given a little chance at Swansea in getting promoted, and as soon as we got promoted, we were going to get relegated, and then 5 years later, you're still in the Premier League, that type of thing. So that was good. Proud to win a major trophy. No matter how you look at it, the Capital One Cup, as it was at the time, the league trophy, Carabao Cup. Carabao Cup now is a major trophy, and we managed to get a win there, and it is being part of things like that. But also little things, with at the time at Swansea, when Michel first came in, his ambition was to get to a World Cup and be in the World Cup squad with the Dutch the following year. We managed to do that. Jordan's ambitions to get into an England squad, he's managed to do that, and so on. So there's loads of little things as well that it's just being part of. I never look at it and say I've done this or I've done that. It's always been in football. It is always about being around people, and you need people around you. You don't do it yourself. You need the support. And going back, and I know jokingly what you said, but you just supporting it. There's a lot of people that have done, have been part of his journey as an example. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There, Mark Pruru's at Sunderland. Had Jordan for like 7 or 8 years. He's the main person that's got Jordan where he was from the work that he put into him at that sort of younger age. And I'm just part of a supporting element in going forward. And it's the same whether it's a victory for going back to Swansea or Sunderland staying in the Premier League on that period of time. You're just part of a process in trying to support them. So I suppose, going back to 1997 when I first started coaching, to say, right, I'm coming up to nearly 30 years, 28 years in doing it, if you look at that and you're still in the game, that's a proud element to be part of. And I'm proud in being, working for England, and going to Morocco and working in Morocco. And I enjoy that. And you're proud of what you try to do and try to achieve. And if you're going to, support players, managers and coaches out there in the coaching world, what I'm doing it now at the moment a lot as well, then great. We're looking after the future England players, but also coaches that are going to come in and hopefully take over from the likes of myself in the future.
The last thing I wanted to ask is about your advice towards the younger generation, the goalkeepers out there, the players in general. What would you say to them? What's the most important lesson that they have to learn to be ready to be at the top level?
The boring one, but right, is about the hard work. You know, you have to work at your game. You know, you have to work on the field and off the field. It's not just going to be given to you. You know, you have to go in every day, and you know, when you walk onto that grass and cross the white line every morning, you know, you have to be prepared to work and put in the effort. And you know, you need that supporting element around you. You know, I say to the young goalkeepers at the top clubs now, there's so many staff members about now. You know, you should be knocking the door every day of all these staff members, making sure you're maximising what you've got on the table. You know, if I go back to when I was 18 or 17, 18 at Torquay, you know, we had, you know, Norman was the physio, he was the masseur, he was the strength and conditioning, he was the diet and nutrition. You know, he was the one-man band. That's all I had to go after. You know, and a head coach and an assistant coach. You know, these young players in the club environment at the top level, but also in the academy environments now. Like, and this goes through probably through the leagues. I've got a lot of staff that they can tap into, and I'd be encouraging them to tap into to maximise their opportunities in going forward 100%.
Well, Adrian, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. We always end with a handshake, so the camera's there. So thank you very much for joining us.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry.
Yeah, pleasure.
And across the table.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.